Mathew, and I'm an alcoholic. Before I thank everybody, there's an explanation for that. I went to Catholic school, a small Catholic school all my life. There were 3 other guys named Matt. I hated 2 of them. And I just think Matthew's a beautiful name, so... and I didn't call him Scott. I do want to say thank you very much to everyone who got me here. I appreciate all the work it took. It's a pleasure to be here. I love the sobriety countdown. I love the enthusiasm. It was funny, it happened here. I was at one of these things in some other town. I was sitting next to a guy with 50 years, and when it got to, with everybody with 20 years, please sit down, everybody erupted. The 20-year people all applauded for themselves, and the guy with 50 years goes, they're still so full of self. And here, you 20-year-olds, you're pretty full of self too. But you know, it's a special weekend for me for a couple of reasons. First of all, I got here and I made it in time to see Teresa last night, and I sat down in the front row, and Bonnie got up to read the steps. Is everybody here for that? When Bonnie started to read the steps, she started to cry on step 1, and she said, "I'm sorry, these steps just mean so much to me." And it just set the tone for me. You know, I'm very busy. I apologize. I should have had a haircut before I got here, but I've been traveling for 3 solid weeks. I haven't seen my kids for more than 1 night in 3 weeks, and I came over here, and I've been busy with a lot of things. There's a lot of pressure on me at my job, and I try to keep my family close and together and be a good father. I feel dedicated to the people I sponsor. But when I came in here, I had a lot of things on my mind, and when Bonnie paid reverence to the steps like that, it brought me right here. It's intimidating standing up here with pictures of these people, these men that did these things, that made this possible for us. It's intimidating to me. I'm just a guy who got sober. And make it worse, I'm figuring out how to tell you this. I had an uncle, Uncle Ed, who ruined every Thanksgiving and Christmas for my family. He was a drunk, and he was obnoxious, and he was terrible to my aunt, and he just ruined it. I ended up going to Thanksgiving at somebody else's house because Uncle Ed was so just a loathsome human being. And I always hated him. When he died, his kids did not have a funeral because they couldn't think of anyone who would come, including them. And I just always had this terrible resentment against him. I mean, I don't think about him that much, but when I do, I don't think good things. And on the other hand, I have this person in my life named Sandy Beach who I've never met, but I've listened to his CDs for years. And my father passed away when I was pretty newly sober, and he meant a lot to me. Sandy helped me through a lot of things, and I'd never met the man. And I saw he was on the pamphlet, and I didn't know he was from Tampa. And I'm like, why am I speaking? Sandy Beach is here. You know? You guys crazy? You know? And so I went over and I said, "Hey, is Sandy Beach here?" And the guy said, "Yeah, he's right over there." And I turned around, and there stood a man who looked exactly like my Uncle Ed. I want you to know, Sandy, that your reputation rubbed off on his did not rub off on you. And I do believe that whatever it is that moves here and the animating force that people call God and a higher power, I don't think that's an accident. I paused for a second and laughed and thought, Uncle Ed was just an alcoholic, just like Sandy. And it really just altered me a little. I'm not quite sure I'm there with him yet, but it helped. And Jerry Jones and I have known each other for a while. We run across each other and on this traveling we do. We met in St. Louis and Texas a couple times. And it's been a real treat, Jerry, just to spend so much time with you. We've had breakfast and lunch together. These guys are my fathers. They don't know it. But my father's gone. My father's a good, honest, hard-working guy, not an alcoholic. But I have these people in my life that lift me up and teach me how to live, and teach me how to be a parent, and teach me how to be a husband, teach me how to be an employee. And I'm just so grateful. I don't know what else to say. You know, I'm so enthusiastic about Alcoholics Anonymous. I really am. I have a passion for this thing. You know, when I came here, I had absolutely nothing. And so I used to joke that if you picked up anything in my house, including my children, and turned it over, it says on the bottom, property of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's truly true. There's nothing that I have that isn't a result of what I've learned here and what I've had the grace to do here, and you know, the gift of grace to do here, and the direction I've gotten here. And I really want to talk about recovery. So I really always attempt to just tell you a little bit about what it was like, so I can tell you a whole bunch about what happened and what it's like now. So I'm going to tell you about my first drink and my last drink, and hopefully that won't take too long. I didn't drink in high school when everybody else was drinking because I had a brother who was a terrible alcoholic, and he was my hero and my idol. He was 7 years older than me. I'm the next one in line. I was what we call an Irish surprise. You know, I personally am grateful Catholics don't believe in birth control, but that's for selfish reasons. But my brother ahead of me was a terrible drunk, and he made my home life very unhappy. So when my friends and everybody were drinking beer and doing stuff, I was afraid of it, because it was the cause for the darkness in my house. But I was, like many people I've encountered in Alcoholics Anonymous, I felt less than. You know, I went to this small Catholic school. I had the same 6 friends from first grade through high school, and I was convinced that they were hanging out with me out of pity. They were better looking than me, I thought. They were smarter than me, I thought. They were better athletes than me. They were better athletes than me. I think that's the only one of those 3 that's true. But I felt less than all the time. You know, I was skinny, I had pimples, I was really, really skinny. And I played guitar, and they all played sports, but they loved me, and they accepted me, and they weren't the type of friends that pressured me to drink. It never came up. And I just said no thanks, and you know, I was still a little crazy. I just didn't drink. But one night, I think it was my senior year, I'm not sure if it was my junior or senior year, somebody's parents had gone out of town, and we were in this house in Hermosa Beach overlooking the ocean, and my friend Casey got a bottle of tequila, and these guys started doing shots of tequila. And this was a Catholic school party, meaning there were 6 guys and no girls. And I'm not drinking, so I'm noticing the lack of girls. And they started drinking these shots of tequila, and I couldn't stand it. And things were particularly bad at my home that year. But I couldn't take it anymore. I felt like I wasn't part of it, and I just couldn't take it. So I said, hey, I'll have a shot. They didn't make a big deal out of it. They just said, oh, okay, and they poured me a shot of tequila. And I kind of love describing what happens next, because only you people understand. You know, I took this shot of tequila, and 12 years of Catholic school guilt just melted out of my shoulder. All my pimples had vanished. And I went and found a much bigger glass and said, I would like some more, please. I really thought, now I get it. It's the answer to everything. And I drank some more tequila like it was water, and I was funny, and I was participating, and I thought we should go play football because I'm on, I can tell. And I just felt, you know, huge. And I drank a lot of tequila, and we were laughing, having a good time, and I had to go to the bathroom, you know, and suddenly I felt like I was on a cruise ship. You know, the whole thing was shifting. And I grew up around this house. All of our friends were very close. And I'm walking down this hall. This particular Irish Catholic family had 8 kids, so it had a huge hall with all these bedrooms. And I'm trying to get down the hall, and I turn into the bathroom. It's a beautiful bathroom. And I'm a pretty serious Catholic kid. As I sit down on the toilet, my last thought is that God would not make your body so that you could defecate and vomit at the same time. Because that would not be a perfect God. And as some of you may know, I was wrong about that. And I blacked out as I lurched towards the sink. But the funniest part of this story is that I woke up in a sleeping bag with a pillow under my head in the bathroom like I had gone camping. You know? And I had no idea why I was there. Why did I sleep in here? There's 8 bedrooms in this house. And it smelled like bleach, and I didn't know why. And I got up, and everybody was gone, and I was late for school, so I went to school, and about halfway through the day, I remembered what happened, and I was filled with shame. I was cool for about 4 minutes. And then I don't think you can be any less cool than being found in between functions on the floor of the bathroom. But I'll tell you what, I still know those men. I still know those guys, and they have never mentioned it. They cleaned me up, put me in the sleeping bag, and went to school. They have never mentioned it. I did not. A lot of people say these things. I hear these things. I get the chance to hear a lot of people speak, and they say, you know, I drank, I got deathly ill, but I couldn't wait to do it again. But what happened, the shame and the embarrassment and just the humiliation of that night, coupled with what was happening at my home because of my older brother, were too much for me. And I didn't drink again in high school. And just before I went to college, my brother moved in with us. He had been homeless because of alcoholism. And he got sober, and he just came by and said, I've got 60 days sober, I need to take a shower. And they said, if you've got 60 days sober, you can live here. And I loved him, and he would sit in the bathtub and read this magical blue book. And I would shave and look at that book and think, I wonder what's in that book. There's nothing we try to help that guy. And we tried everything. So he got sober and I went off to college. And this doesn't have the impact here in Florida, but I went to Chico State, where our motto is, I think I went to Chico State. And, I have a diploma, but I forgot on my way to Chico State that I didn't drink. You know, there's a lot of younger people in here. I forgot I didn't do acid and smoke pot and snort coke too. I don't know, whatever. This is an Alcoholics Anonymous. I just was very forgetful. But I drank. I'm Irish Catholic. I always like to say, you know, my parents were lovely people. They really were. My parents were married for 50 years when they passed away. And my dad was a hard-working, honest guy. And my mom was a lovely school teacher, a quiet, observant woman. And, you know, my alcoholism is not their fault. I'm Irish Catholic, and that's their fault. But not my alcoholism. So anyway, fast forward, that's my first drink. Fast forward, I graduated with honors. I ended up living my dream. I wanted to be a rock and roll musician. I'd been playing guitar, but I had those pimples and not drinking. That's all I did was sit in my room and play guitar. And I went on the road with a rock and roll band, with many rock and roll bands. And I made my living playing music for a long time. And we were fairly successful. Good things happened, except as my dream came true, my drinking got worse and worse and worse and worse. And I actually, you know, I got kicked out of a rock and roll band for drinking too much. I think that's funny, you know. I'm kind of proud of that. You know? You guys may think you drank a lot. It's a hard profession, you know. Then Keith Richards, that's like Keith Richards going, dude, you got to get it together, man. You have problems. But I would miss the bus and not show up for the show, and that's very bad when you play lead guitar and sing some. And I would be at the recording sessions, and just the sound of the drums was so obnoxious, you know. And I love music, you know, and I laugh about it now, but I drank my dream away. I got a dream that 1 in a million get to have. And I had a talent, you know, and I did the hard work. And all that hard work was happening on one side, and on the other side I was stealing from myself. Every day. And I did a lot of bad things to those people, and they were right to kick me out. And I came back I lived in North Carolina when I finally gave up doing that, and I came back and I lied, and I told everybody that I was coming back to Redondo Beach because my mom had cancer. And the truth was, my mom had cancer. My mom had a diagnosis where she just had a few years left to live, and but the lie was that I came home for her. Because, you know, I love my mom. I totally respect my mother. I don't think I've ever met as fine a person as my mother, and, but I would have stayed away till past her funeral. And I'm not proud of that. I just know that that's true. The only thing that mattered to me was me. And when I got back to California, it didn't matter that I graduated with honors. It had been a lot of years. I didn't have, you couldn't I played a really great lead guitar on an application for a job, So I got a job at a restaurant as a waiter, because I thought if you're a waiter, you're kind of still an artist figuring out what you're going to do. Right? And I thought when they gave me the job, this job is beneath me. And I got the job, and a couple days later, the manager came down and said, "Hey, you went to college. You have like a major and a minor. You graduated with honors." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "You want to be the manager?" I said, "No." Because that's even lamer, right? Because if you're a restaurant manager, you're a restaurant manager. You're not an artist anymore. said yes because I needed the money. I had a lot of debt, but I thought it was beneath me. I thought it was beneath me. That's how arrogant I was. And the guy was taking me around. I was so depressed. He's walking me around this restaurant. He's like, here's the cook's schedule. This is how we work out when they come in. Here's the safe, and here's the combination of the safe. Here's the keys to the office. Here are the keys to the bar. And then he just kept talking. And I saw Excalibur. And I said, this job is perfectly suited to a man of my experience and my talents. I got the keys to the bar. And then he reintroduced me to all the 18-year-old waitresses. And I thought, keys to the bar, waitresses, I get it. And that's how I managed that restaurant. I actually would hover over the last table so they'd leave, so I could lock the restaurant and get all the girls up to the bar and bring some in the house, It wasn't good for business, but when we got up there, we would drink, and the plan was, and I'm just going to alienate about half the room, but I want to be honest. I think it's important that I be honest about what I was like. And my plan was to get some of these girls drunk and go home with one of them, right? And I guess that happened a couple of times, but the majority of the times it was, they'd be standing there going, hey, it's 2 in the morning, we got a hot tub at our apartment, you want to go to our apartment? And I'd be like, why would we leave here? I have all of this, And I'd pass out alone on the bar. I couldn't walk away from it. And I didn't want to take things away, I just drank what was there, and I passed out, and the morning manager would drive up, and I'd run out and hide in the floor of my car. I just love this. It was the only car in the parking lot. But I'm hovering on the floor, thinking he won't see me. And the guy invariably pulled right up next to me. So then, the day they fired me, when I was shocked, right? I was like, you can't fire me, this job's beneath me, I go, once again, I got fired from a job that was beneath me. Anybody else have that happen? But the day they fired me, this waitress came up to me and said, I'm pregnant. Yeah, that was my reaction, something like that. And now I'm really going to alienate half the room, but I want to be honest. If you had lined up the waitresses at this restaurant and said, which one of them do you want to get pregnant? I would have said, not her. Maybe her, she seems nice. But, and I'll tell you why, and I want to be honest. I want to tell you what it was like for me. In my mind, this 18-year-old college-bound girl that just found out she was pregnant was selfish and self-centered. I want to be honest, she got the wrong convertible for her birthday. I remember that. We discussed it with her. And we had a very physical relationship based on alcohol and drugs. And when she told me she was pregnant, I couldn't believe it. And they just fired me. They didn't even know about her. And it's just funny how life unfolds. Like I got fired and she told me this. It was stunning. My brain was numb. And I was walking down to go, and I realized that they were looking at me, so I boldly walked out into the employee parking lot. I hadn't seen my car for about 3 months, but I didn't want them to know that I didn't have a car. So I walked out the employee parking lot and slammed the door. And then I snuck around the building to go to the bus stop. And the bus stop was across the street, and oddly enough, the bus stop was right in front of an Alano club. But I didn't know what that was. But it was also in front of a civic center where they had this class where they taught young mentally retarded, young adults, like 20 to 30-year-old mentally retarded and severely autistic, or young adults how to live on their own. They taught them how to cook and pay bills and do things. And there were about 8 or 9 of these people waiting at the bus stop. And I walk up and I got snot coming out of my nose. I got my Marie Callender's manager badge on. I got my knit tie, because I was trying to bring knit ties back all by myself. And I'm walking up, and they're standing there, and I'm just humiliated, and I'm embarrassed, and I'm looking down at the ground, and I'm looking around, and I'm standing on Pacific Coast Highway, so I step off on the Pacific Coast Highway to see if the bus is going to come, and 10 mentally retarded people went, "Don't stand in the tree! Don't stand in the tree!" and scared the crap out of me. I jumped out, I thought they saw the bus, and I'm like, I'm standing. And then I realized, they're just better at waiting for a bus than I am. I graduated with honors from UMass Amherst. That's where I ended up graduating from, and I can't even wait for a bus right. And sadly, that was not my problem. I got in that bus, and I wanted to die. I just wanted to die. And I didn't tell my mother, who was sick with cancer 2 miles away from me, that I lost my job. I didn't tell them that there was a girl who was a teenager who was pregnant with my baby. I was 31 years old. I went into that apartment and I tried to drink myself to death. And I thought about those parents. You know, I would call my mom in a moment of clarity. I'd call my mom and say, "Mom, I'm going to come visit you." And every single time I did that, my mom said, "That would be so lovely, honey." Every single time. And I'd hang up the phone and I'd walk towards the door and I'd stop. And I'd think, you know, I don't look so good. You know, by the time I got sober, I weighed 108 pounds. And this is about 3 months before that. And I think, I don't look so good, and I don't have a job, and I got to tell them about Anna, and so I'm just going to have one drink. And if you held a gun to my head and said, "Are you going to have one drink and go see your mom?" I would have said, "If I don't, you can shoot me, because that's what I'm going to do." And I went to see my mom exactly 0 times. She lived 2 miles away. I probably called her 30 times. And every time I called, she said, "That would be lovely." She didn't give me a hard time. She didn't know what was wrong. Nobody knew what was wrong. And those parents, they were so kind. You know, my father was such a good man. He worked really hard. He worked till late at night. He owned his own business. And my mother did all these things so we could go to college. And she took this other job as a school teacher. And my mother was a woman of quiet dignity. My father always spoke highly of my mother. He never said the words "ball and chain." He said, "Greatest thing that ever happened to me." And they didn't fight. I was the youngest of 4 of a big, you know, Irish Catholic family. They loved each other. They showed each other respect. And you know, when that girl was 8.5 months pregnant, I pushed her down a flight of stairs. And I didn't do that because I wanted to hurt her. I didn't want to hurt her. I didn't do that because I wanted to hurt that baby. I didn't want to hurt that baby. But the truth is, I didn't have a feeling in me for them. I couldn't even feel them. And she wanted, this is probably May 1st, 1993, and she wanted to go to the doctor for a checkup and wanted me not to drink that day, and I'd already started. She was standing in the doorway, and I pushed her too hard. I just meant to get her out of the doorway. But I could tell that I pushed her too hard, and I saw the surprise on her face as she started to walk backwards towards the stairs. And I closed the door, because I didn't want responsibility for that. And I heard her. And I went inside, and I made myself a drink. And I didn't check to see what happened. That's what it was like. That's what alcoholism did to me. I started off with everything. I had so much love in my life. I had talent. I had people who cared for me and gave me the right direction, and I turned into an animal with alcohol. So that was May 1st, 1993, and my sobriety date was May 16th, 1993. And around May 14th, I think, was Mother's Day, because my brother, who was sober now for 12 years, called me up and said, "Hey, it's Mother's Day. It might be Mom's last Mother's Day. I'm going to come get you because we're going to have a brunch down at the yacht club, and we just want to make sure that you're going to show up." And my response was, "Why would you think I'm not going to show up?" People are so judgmental, you know. And you just say, "Well, anyway, I'll come pick you up." And they didn't know what was wrong with me. They were concerned about Mom, and I walked out that door to see my brother. I didn't let him come in the apartment. It was too crazy in there. I lived all by myself. And I went outside and I weighed 108 pounds. You know? I didn't have a sober breath for months. I put on a clean shirt, but I was dirty. I didn't take a shower. And we got in the car and he was shocked. And we drive down to the yacht club. When we get out, and my mom and dad, my brothers and sisters there, they flew in from out of town. And my dad's nervous because my mom's real sick. And when my dad's nervous, he tells a lot of jokes. And he looked at me and got quiet. And I didn't know why everybody was so surprised, because I didn't know that I looked bad. It slowly happened over time. I adjusted. And I sat down and I couldn't make any sense. I tried to talk, and I tried to talk too much. I tried to fill up the uncomfortable silence with, you know, disconnected conversation. And my brother finally said quietly, well, actually what happened was My brothers and my sister and my mom and my dad slowly turned me out of the conversation, and they stopped looking at me. And I've had so many moments of bitter and incomprehensible demoralization because of alcoholism. I did things to other people that I never thought I'd ever do. I told you about one of them, but I did a lot of them. And I let things be done to me that I never thought I'd ever let anyone do to me because of alcoholism and drug addiction. But the worst moment of incomprehensible demoralization was that moment. I don't know why. I don't know why. If you saw my life story, you'd say that's not the worst moment. But it is. It was. I don't know why. I felt lonelier than I've ever felt. I was the youngest. I was the star. They all loved me, and they were completely finished. And my brother said, let's go home. And he drove me home, and on the way home we got in a fight. I don't know what it was about. But I was so mad at him, whatever it was, that I slammed his door. I went into my house, and I waited for him to get home. I wanted to finish my argument. And I got all my arguments together in a row, and I waited till he got home, and I called him up, and I'm screaming at him, yelling at him, laying it out. Here's my brother, sober, visiting my mom, has a family, goes to work every day, and here's me. I haven't had a job in 8 months. I weigh 108 pounds. There's a teenage girl across town with my illegitimate child, and I think I have the moral higher ground. That's how we are. I'm right, And when I finally get done yelling at my brother, he didn't say a word. I finally got done yelling at him, and he very quietly said into the phone, Matthew, I think you have a problem called alcoholism. Now, I look at this as a moment of grace in my life. I really do. Not because of what he said. People had said that to me before. Band managers. I was engaged once for about 5 minutes until I met her dad. And, he took me for a walk. And then told me I had a problem with alcohol and all this stuff. And it wasn't that. It was the moment of grace. The moment of grace was what came out of my mouth. And I still have no idea why I said this. I'm standing looking at the floor yelling at my brother. He says, you have a problem with alcoholism. And out of my mouth came, of course I do. And I didn't know it. I didn't know it at the time, but I worked the first step. I admitted. And I can tell you exactly what the carpet looked like and how the sun hit it through the Venetian blinds and what kind of mess it was at that moment, because something happened to me. I don't know what it was. It wasn't a spiritual awakening, but I said, of course I do. And my brother said the next funniest thing he's ever said to me in my life. He said, don't go anywhere. I was like, oh, okay. I'll clear my calendar. I've been sitting on the couch waiting. I would hold my breath when the mailman came, because I didn't know who that was, right? For 8 months. And he's like, don't go anywhere. I'm coming over. And I thought my brother was going to come over to my house, kick my ass, and I'd never drink again, And I know it seems funny, but I really thought that. And the funnier thing is, I kind of hope that's what he was going to do. Because as bad as it was on the outside of my life, and I've told you a little tiny bit about what it was like. It was a moonscape on the outside of my life. It was 10,000 times uglier in here. Way inaccessible up here. And I thought, maybe he'll just beat me. Someone should beat me. I am an animal, and I know better, and I can't stop it. And he didn't do that. He came over to my house, and he walked in, and he inhaled, and he said, let's go to the beach. It was kind of ripe in there, I had these things in California. I don't know if you have them out here. They're called SWAT-proof blankets, and you put them on the windows. I had those, and I had bottles all over the floor. I had dishes in the sink from the Reagan administration. Because I was a single guy. And he said, let's go to the beach. And he took me down to the beach, and he did this amazing thing. He did an amazing thing. He sat on one side of this lifeguard stand, and I sat on the other. And he started talking to me about how he felt when my mom and dad threw him out of the house when I was a senior in high school. Oh no, they threw him out of the house when he's 7 years older than me. He was 17, so I was 10 years old. And I remember that. I remember that because it was a horrible day in our family. And he started talking to me about how he felt when his wife and child threw him out of their house. And he called me that day. I remember that because I was about 13 or 14. And he had no one else to call. And he started talking to me about how he felt when he lived in his car, and that's when I was a senior in high school. And I remember that because I used to drive around looking for him. I'd see his car, and I'd pull up alongside, and I'd just sneak a peek to see if he was still because I loved him so much. And right in the middle of that, he started talking to me about how I felt sitting on that lifeguard stand. He was describing it. And I didn't know that anybody in the world knew how I felt. The loathsome feeling, the arrogance, the fear, the inability to communicate even a little bit about what was happening in my head. And he just described it by telling me a little bit of his own story. And he won my confidence. Because I wanted to be him. I wanted to get to that side of the lifeguard stand. You know, every day on those 8 months that I was unemployed and that girl was getting more and more pregnant, my mom was dying of cancer, every day I woke up and said, I don't want to drink today. I don't want to drink today. I don't want to drink today. I want to get a job. I want to go see my mom. I want to talk to the parents of this teenage girl and tell them I'm a stand-up guy. I don't want to drink today. And then by 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, I'm drunk. And I don't know how. I don't know how. That's what kept happening to me. I didn't want to drink. I knew I was an alcoholic. I couldn't stop. But I thought I could stop. I had done so many things in the last minute. I had pulled so many things out of the hat. I'd been the hero so many times, and I just killed myself every day trying not to drink. And he was sitting there not drinking, telling the truth. He had clear eyes. He looked great. And he had been where I had been. That was stunning news for me. I'd love to tell you that I surrendered on the spot. I'd love to tell you, but what happened was, and this isn't, I'm not trying to be funny, I ran out of cigarettes. And he kept talking. And I got uncomfortable, because I got to be, if you're there, I got to put something in me every few minutes to alter me so you're okay. And I was out of cigarettes. And I threw up my hands, and I said to this wise Buddha, you're right, I need to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. And suddenly he became my sarcastic older brother. He looked at me and he laughed. He goes, dude, you're not going to AA. He said, you're going to a hospital. And I looked right at him and totally seriously I said, oh, I can't do that. I'm busy. Anybody else busy? And then I said, well, how long do I have to go? And he said, I don't know, it's like 28 days. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I can't leave all this for a month. I mean, who's not going to pay the bills? I'm the guy not paying the bills. Who's not going to answer the phone when it rings? That's my job. I don't answer the phone at that particular apartment. And he just looked at me and was looking right over my head. I didn't know it, but he was trying to figure out how to get me into a hospital immediately. Because I just said, okay. Right? And we walked up to my apartment, and at that time I'd been putting a gun in my mouth for the last week or so every night. This baby was going to come. My mom was going to die. I had warrants out for my arrest. I owed tens of thousands of dollars. And I put this gun in my mouth, and I prayed to have the courage to pull the trigger to do everybody a favor and get me out of here. So when we were walking up to my apartment, my brother looked at me for a long time as I was standing on the porch fumbling with my keys because I felt very self-conscious, and he said, please don't die. And I didn't know that he knew about the gun. I thought he must know about the gun. And I was embarrassed. And what he saw was me dying. I was dying right in front of him. You know, you can go into cardiac arrest pretty easily when you weigh 108 pounds. All I did was drink gin. I ate donuts, and I ate those sugar donuts and a thing of yogurt every couple of days because they were healthy. Yogurt and Coke. And I lived right next door to a liquor store. I sold all my guitars. The things that meant the world to me. And he said, don't die. And anyway, I woke up on May 16th. I stayed up May 15th getting ready for rehab, you know. So I'm not a slacker. And I wanted to be ready. I didn't want them to be disappointed in the specimen that arrived. And I passed out, and I fell asleep on the floor. And right next to the phone rang, scared the hell out of me. I jumped up, looked at the phone, I answered it, which was, I don't normally do, but I thought it was my brother. And it was some woman. Actually, I just met this woman about a month ago. I haven't known who she was for 18 years. And she said, hey, your daughter was born. We've been trying to reach you. Can you come to the hospital? And I said, of course. And I was wearing these hospital pants. Remember we used to wear those? I don't know if you did that out here. We used to wear these gray scrubs, and I had a t-shirt and flip-flops on. And I didn't look at myself. I just ran out the door to try to find my car. And I looked around for my car, and I finally found my car. It had a bunch of parking tickets on it. And I got in my car. It was hard to start. And then the next thing I did, I think, you know, I read the book with a lot of newcomers, and in the book it says a lot of times, but it says specifically, you know, alcoholism is, the characteristic of alcoholism is selfishness and self-centeredness. And I just think this is such an amazing example of this. When I got that car started, I drove to the hospital where I was born. Because that's where babies come from, right? They weren't there. And she had told me a million times where this baby was going to be born, but I'm like, I know where babies are born, you know, and all of life has come from Little Company of Mary on Torrance Boulevard, according to me, and they weren't there, and I was pounding on the counter going, look again, and she's saying, sir, they're not there, and they're like talking to me about an outpatient program, and I'm like, I gotta go, and I jumped in my car, and I didn't know what to do, and then my car just drove to the right hospital. I had known all along, I was in a daze. And I went to the hospital and I wasn't preparing myself. I went up and found out the room, and I went up in the elevator and I was looking at the room numbers and I wasn't preparing myself. I wasn't thinking. And I turned into the room and there was Anna. And she jumped up. And she was happy to see me. And I felt shame and humiliation. The last time I saw her, I pushed down a flight of stairs. And I forgot. And she jumped up and she was happy to see me. And she came walking towards me, smiling. And I was really concerned that she was going to hug me because I started to realize that I smelled terrible. And I was dirty and I felt so filthy. And she stopped, mercifully. She stopped right in the middle of the room. And she turned around and she leaned into this little rectangular thing. And she pulled out Phoebe Rose. And she handed me Phoebe and said, look at our beautiful daughter. And I held this little girl in my arms and I looked at her and she was, I don't know what to say. She was purity. She was purity. She's big blue eyes. She just, her face was so round and pure. She's just gorgeous. And I felt filthy. It was not a moment of awakening. It was not a moment of clarity. I felt worse at that moment than I have ever felt in my entire life. And I said a prayer to myself. I was looking at Anna smiling at me, and I was holding this angel of God. And I said a prayer, and my prayer was, I hope these people never see me again. Because I'm going to do something stupid. And I'm going to hurt them. And I'm probably not even going to notice. Because that's what I do. I just make things worse. And when I make them worse, they go really badly. I'd almost killed them. That didn't even register to me. And I think that was a righteous prayer. And I gave that baby back to Anna and I lied. And I said, everything's going to be fine. And I left. I was in that room for 3 minutes. And I left. And I was going to go home and get that gun. And do them a favor. And I got back to my apartment and my brother was sitting on my porch really pissed. He's like, where have you been? And I said, my daughter was born today. And he looked at the ground. He didn't say congratulations. He didn't say how is she. He didn't say what's her name. He said get in the car. I packed your stuff. And we went off to the hospital. And I don't know if any of you came that route, but the scariest day in my life was walking into that hospital. Second scariest day in my life, coming out. I didn't have my medicine and I didn't know you walking in. Walking out, there was the big scary world where I still had warrants out for my arrest. I had a month-old baby. My mom's dying of cancer. I owe tens of thousands of dollars. My brother picked me up from that, drove me home. He pushed me out of his car and said, go to a meeting. I had 30 days of sobriety and I thought, go to a meeting? Okay. These AA people are kind of a little extreme, you know. I got 30 days. I got to go see Mom. I got to go see Phoebe. I got to talk to Anna. I got to get a job. But go to a meeting. You know, I just spent 30 days in a hospital. I thought, that's insane. But I said, okay. He drives away. I walk into my apartment. Somebody hands me a beer. Actually, it wasn't a beer. It was a Coors. And I looked at that thing, and they were snorting cocaine on my glass table, smoking pot in my kitchen, all my favorite Olympic events. And I'm looking at this beer, and I backed out of that apartment, and I put that beer down, and I ran. And I want to tell you why. I don't for anything. I had no character. I had no self-respect. I hated myself. I had no friends, I had no money, I had no prospects. But I had 30 days. And I thought, all I got in the world is 30 days. I'm not going to waste it on these losers today. That's the thing that flashed in my head. I didn't know if I was going to drink that day. I just knew it wasn't going to happen like that. And I put that beer down and I ran to a phone booth. There's some young people here. Phone booths were glass. You had to push the doors and it was kind of hard to explain. Then you kind of squeeze and I called Alcoholics Anonymous. Now I have a degree in literature. I have a minor in religious studies, and I couldn't find it in the phone book. I really couldn't. I looked in the back. I thought it's embarrassing. It must be in the back. AA, it's right in the front. Kathy, just so you know, right in the front of the phone book. AA. And God bless you for standing up here with one day. God bless you. I think we should all be shot for making her do that. Very good. I called AA, and that poor guy that answered the phone got to hear everything you guys have heard so far. I just went, you know, all right, start with me, Papa, got a baby, Mom, got that. Coors. Really, you know, I thought I could use some help, so I wanted him to understand my particular bend, you know, and I gave him information. And the poor guy, I love to hear this on tape because he was just listening to this blustering fool, and then he goes, "Where are you?" And I said, his phone booths were made of glass, and I could see this sign. I said, "Well, I'm at the corner of Catalina and Burl," or I can't remember the corner. He said, he flipped through some papers, and he said, "God, that's so weird." And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "There's an AA meeting right across the street from where you're standing. It starts in about 15 minutes. Yeah, that's what you guys say. We know what I said. What should I do? Because I called for help, you know. I thought he'd given him enough information that he could give me sort of concierge service. I don't want to go to a meeting. But I went into the meeting and I was afraid. And if you're in your first year, you know, I don't know what you're feeling, but I felt like everybody in the room was looking at me and talking about me. And I walked in there and it seemed like there's always only one chair that's right in the middle. And I went up there and there's a guy up there. I got there right when the meeting started. I hung outside until just before I ran in. I sat down and the guy had a suit on. He got up to speak, and I'll never forget what this guy said. I'll never forget it as long as I live. He held the podium very calmly and he said, "Wah, wah, 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 wah." Kind of what you're hearing now, Kathy. Wah, 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 wah. And I'm like, wow, I'm screwed, you know. I cannot hear him. Because he wasn't saying, "Matthew, your particular problem that I was thinking about at that time," he wasn't addressing my issues, you know. And I remember he pointed to the steps and said, "These are tools for living." I thought, okay, cool, I'll read that. And then I got a degree up to a minor, major, graduate honors, and I'm like, why are they in Chinese, man? Like somebody said, where's the lawyer step? Where's the IRS step? Where's the how to change a baby step? I had stuff I needed, you know. But I got up as soon as that meeting was over, I started to leave, and a guy stopped me and said, "Aren't you Matthew? You're Neil's little brother." And I said, "Yeah." You know what he said? He said, "I heard you look like shit." I said, "Well, that was 30 days and 47 pounds ago. I gained 47 pounds in a month at that hospital." And he said, he goes, "Well, can I give you a ride home?" And I said, "Yeah, I love that." And as he's walking towards his car, I'm walking slower. And he's walking, I'm walking slower, because where am I going to go? And he's going to take me home, and I'm embarrassed, and my whole MO was embarrassed. And he said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "You know, I don't think I have a home." And I told him what they were doing in my apartment. And I told him how I lived there by myself, and then my lower companions moved in. And he said, thought for a second, he goes, "Well, don't your parents live around here?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, I'll take you there." And I said, "You're not going to take me there." And this is something that's very important. A lot of people in their first year of sobriety here, and I want to tell you something I wish somebody had told me. There's your perception of reality, and it's way over here. And over here is reality. And my perception of reality was that my parents at that time were married for about 45 years, right? I'm the loser son that just got out of rehab with an illegitimate child. I can't go there. I can't humiliate these people like that. They have dignity. I'm not going to embarrass them in the neighborhood by being dropped off on their porch and moving in at 31. It's the worst possible thing that could happen to them. It's humiliating for me. I'm not going to do it. So the guy drops him out of my parents' house. Because you guys just don't listen. And he drives away, and I walk up, and the door opens, and they were happy to see me. Really happy. The truth was, reality over here was, they were married for 45 years at that time. My mother's dying of cancer. My dad's beside himself with fear. I've been in rehab for 30 days. I got an illegitimate daughter, and the one guy that they've been worrying about for months just showed up looking pretty good. They loved me. And when I spent that year with my parents, my mother was dying before my very eyes. And my father was terrified of being without her because he adored her. And I watched my mother love my father into confidence. It was beautiful. It was perfect. Reality always is. It doesn't matter what the circumstances are. It's full of presence. My perception matters not at all. And over here in reality, I was uncomfortable at that house. When I woke up the next day, I couldn't believe that that's where I'd ended up. And I was uncomfortable, and I had a meeting directory, and I asked my dad if I could borrow the car to go to the attitude adjustment meeting. It's at 7 a.m. and it's not very far away. Can I please borrow the car? And he said, yeah. And I just wanted to get out of the uncomfortable place. You know where I found out the second most uncomfortable place was? With you guys. I got to the meeting and I thought, oh, this is where they stare at me and talk about me. I forgot, you know. And I sat in the corner, and as the meeting was over, I went home and I sat with my father and I talked to him for a while. I started getting very uncomfortable because I had done a lot of horrible things to those people. And my father said, you okay? And I said, you know, Dad, there's a meeting at noon. Can I borrow your car? I'd like to go to a new meeting. And I did. I went from one uncomfortable place to the next uncomfortable place for a year. 3 times a day. And I learned so much. And I don't have much time. I have maybe 15 minutes to tell you about what I can never tell you about. I can never do it. I've never, ever been able to describe what's happened to me here. I listen to these people, these men I love so much, Jerry and Sandy, and they talk about the spirituality of AA. They just go right to it. And I feel like I got to hold the guardrail of my story to try to explain it. But I'll tell you some things that happened that are important to me, and I think I sort of made a deal with God that if I got a chance to share about some things, I'd share about these things. And one of them was when I was 60 days or 90 days sober, I was walking along with my sponsor, and I was saying, you know, I can't believe how much I love Phoebe. I thought it was the worst thing to have this little baby. And it's turned out to be such a great gift. I'm a sober dad. I'm full of love for her. I love her more than I love myself. And he just walked right by me into the meeting. And my first thought, honestly, was I did not know he was deaf in his left ear. I must have been on his right side all along. And I'm selfish and self-centered. I'm looking at him across the room, and my feelings are hurt, and I'm mad. Then I think he might really be deaf, and then my feelings are hurt, and I'm mad. And then I think I'm going to pay for the operation, and then my feelings are hurt, and I'm mad. And I heard womp, 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 womp. And then we're walking out to his car, and I said, maybe you didn't hear me. I love this girl more than I love myself. And he turns and he puts his hand up and he goes, really? Really? I said, yes. And he goes, how much child support do you pay? And I said, well, God, I work at a newspaper from midnight to 4 in the morning stacking papers on a loading dock. I live with my mom and dad in my old bedroom. I'm 31 years old. I drive a shitty car. And he said, I know that. How much child support do you pay? And I said, well, I don't pay any. And he said, Matthew, this is a program of action. You must know that. You go to 7 gazillion meetings a week. He said, it's not a program of talk. I got a deal with you. Why don't you never tell me you love your daughter again? Just show me and I'll know. And I thought, God, I gotta find another sponsor. This guy's a dick. He's not sensitive at all. And I went back to my house, my parents' house, and I went back to my old bedroom where I still had a poster of Eric Clapton from when I was 14 on the wall. And Eric and I are hashing this out. And I'm like, and after a while, Eric said, maybe he's right. Maybe that's why you're so red-faced. I'm walking in circles, and I realize the reason I'm embarrassed, the reason I'm mad, the reason I think I don't want this man to correct me is because he told me the truth. And I called up Anna, and I said, Anna, I should pay you some money. She said, that'd be great. She worked out. She said, just pay me a percentage. I didn't make any money. And every 2 weeks, I paid that money. Every 2 weeks, every 2 weeks, every 2 weeks. And I want to be honest about where I was in my first year of sobriety. I did not pay that money to be a good father. Not at all. I paid that money for 2 reasons. The number one reason I paid that child support is because my sponsor tied it to my sobriety, and I never wanted to drink again. Ever. Ever. Drinking for me is hell. And I was pretty clear about that. And the second reason I paid that money is because holding Phoebe Rose was the only spiritual experience I had for many months of sobriety. Having that person with me who had no agenda and who accepted me and who just played with my face and was so beautiful and so pure was a spiritual experience. And I wanted to be able to walk by that teenage girl's parents with some dignity. So I paid the money. That's why I paid the money. And I go to the meetings, and it was big speaker meetings. We had a lot of big speaker meetings in LA, and I'd walk into the room, and you guys didn't jump up and applaud. And I was a little hurt. And I got the Grapevine. Remember when you're going to be more sober than anyone and you subscribe to the Grapevine? And I'm looking at the Grapevine. I go right to the index, and I'm looking for where's the Mathew pays child support, he's a hell of a guy article. And it never came. And you know, I kind of feel like you're laughing at me all of a sudden, not with me so much. So I'm going to bring this home to you, make it more real for you. Remember when you got your driver's license and you got your insurance for the first time when you're sober, and you saddle up to one of your buddies in AA and you say, hey, I got my driver's license. And they go, hey, you're 40 years old. You know, that's awesome. Right? Now we feel a little more empathy for the speaker. Yeah. Because we want to parade for doing what everybody does, right? And you know what I found out is after a little while, you not knowing that I was doing that and me still doing it was the most important gift I gave myself. And at a year's, when Phoebe was a year old, I was playing with Phoebe and her mom's going off to college, and I'm going, Phoebe, I'm going to take you to your first day of kindergarten. That's cool. You know, we're dancing around. Like, wait. I'm going to take you to first grade and second grade and third grade and fourth grade. And when you're 16, I'll buy you a car. And when you're 18, I'll take you to college, baby. I'm going to be your dad forever. So what happened? A year ago, I prayed, I hope these 2 women never see me again. And I was right. And all I did was pay that money and show up. And I got a little cleaner inside. I got a little cleaner inside. And I had to be a part of her life. And guess what I'm doing next Sunday? Taking my 18-year-old daughter, Phoebe Rose, to college. You know, I didn't marry her mom. It didn't work out that way. And a lot of good things happened to me in early sobriety. I got better jobs. I showed up. One of the important things that happened to me is I was discussing the 11th step with my sponsor, and I was afraid of the 11th step. You know, God doesn't like me. I'm Catholic. And according to the nuns, I'm not worthy. And I felt that way. And by the time I got here, he really didn't like me for good reason. I felt the word God scared me. And when it said, prayed only for knowledge of God's will for me and the power to carry that out, that seemed ambiguous. And I asked my sponsor, what does that mean? I don't understand. What does that mean? And he said, well, Matthew, I think you're making it too complicated. He said, I think when your alarm clock goes off, God's saying, get up. He said, I think when Phoebe's diaper needs changing, God's saying, let's change the baby. I think when a bill comes in the mail and it says, pay this amount, God's saying, why don't you pay that amount? He's said, if you just do the next indicated thing, I think you can be fairly confident that you're doing God's will. And I know it sounds simple, but it changed my life. It made me successful in business. It made me a better parent. It made me a better father. It made me a better brother. It made me a better son. I was holding my mother in my arms when she died. Wow. She died with cradling with her head in my hands. And we were clean. And the same thing happened to my dad a year later, and we were clean. So when it comes to amends, the ninth step, somebody said it in these questions, I think I'm going to put my name first on my 8-step list because clearly I hurt myself worse than anybody. My experience is, and what I say to my sponsees is, why don't you put your name last, make all those other amends, and see if it's still necessary to make amends to yourself. My experience is it won't be. They're all amends to yourself. So I just have a few minutes, but I have to tell you about the most amazing thing. It's an amazing thing. I got a job at an airline. And I was going to work one day and I bought a guitar. Guitar playing is my passion. I love playing guitar. I play guitar every day. I have for, 32 years. And it takes me to another place. It takes me to a safe place in my head. And I bought this beautiful guitar on the way to work, and I wanted to show somebody, but I was late for work, so I put it in my locker at the airport. I got done with work at 10 o'clock, and I got the guitar out, and I went out to the bus stop, the employee bus stop at LAX. And I'm standing at the bus stop, and I turned to the first person next to me, who happened to be a woman who worked for British Airways, and I turned to her and said, "Hey, can I show you my new guitar?" And she looked at me, and she said, "I don't look at strange men's guitars." And she got on the bus. And I thought, this woman thinks I'm hitting on her. So I jump on the bus, unfortunately for her, and it's packed, right? So she's pressed against this guitar that she's refusing to look at. And I'm looking at her, and I can tell she's uncomfortable, and she has a book in her hand called Surprised by Joy by C.S. Lewis. And I said, "Oh, I've read that book." And she said, "Well, cut to the chase. Do you believe in God?" And I started to shake. And I'm like, "God saved my life!" And she turned white. And I had to pick up line number 2. And she said, "Wow." I'm kind of on the fence, really. I'm taking a class, and she had this beautiful Welsh accent. And as I'm looking at her, and we start talking about what our beliefs are, I noticed that she is beautiful, like stunningly beautiful. And I noticed that I feel relaxed and comfortable in my own skin. And maybe only the men will understand this, but that was a spiritual awakening. I was comfortable, and she was beautiful enough to scare you. And we got off the bus, and I turned to her and said, "I've had such a nice time. Maybe we could miss this, forget about this guitar and have dinner sometime." And she turned to me, and she did not think so. She said, "All right, I'm going to get my guitar. I read that book." She said, "I have to wait for this bus up there. Just get play bus. It's not okay to hit on blah, 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 blah." And I thought, man, she's mad. God, she's pretty. Man, she's mad. Listen to that accent. Man, she's mad. I'm like, it's crazy up here. She storms off, and I go to work the next day, and it's kind of a joke, but it's really true. I know that I had grown spiritually in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, because I went to work the next day, and I didn't tell anybody that she was a lesbian. That's her business, right? I'm okay, you're okay, we're okay. And what I mean is, I liked me. I liked me. I was getting clean inside. I was going on panels. I did the amends. I paid all the tens of thousands of dollars back. I owe no one. And I was liking me. I was clean inside. I was sad that I'd said the wrong thing that made her defensive, because I thought I missed a chance to know somebody who was quite elegant and interesting, who I felt comfortable with. And that next day at work, I only thought about her, like 50 times, not very much. And I went up to that bus stop that night praying she'd made the earlier bus, and she was not there. I was very relieved. And then she came. I could see her out of the corner of my eye. I was not holding a guitar, so I thought perhaps she will not recognize me. I really did. And she tapped me on the shoulder, and she looked at me, and she said, "I believe I was rude to you." She said, "I do not want to have dinner with you, but I'll have coffee with you tonight if you want to miss this bus, and then we're going to call it a day, okay?" And I said, "I would so love that." And we've been married for 15 years. a lesbian and that's the best you can do? What do you got to do in Florida to get a standing ovation? But I remember when I got married, you know, my mom was still alive, my dad was alive, and my wife was the type of person that we're from Illinois and Chicago, except for me, I'm not, I'm from California, but my mom wanted to go home one more time and have a family reunion, and we were going to get married, and she was afraid to go, and so my wife said, why don't we get married in Crystal Lake, Illinois, and let your mom come home and make that our wedding and your family reunion? Because that's the kind of person I married. And I joked with my sponsor when I was getting on that plane. I said, you know, man, she's not blonde, she's not anorexic, she's not addicted to heroin. She's just really not my type. She had this dignity about her. My wife doesn't need me. She's intelligent. She chooses me. She didn't need me. And I needed you to need me, or I didn't think you loved me. She just being near my wife, for me, it's like sitting next to a wild animal. It's thrilling. It's thrilling. Even all these years later, I just love this person. I loved her all the way through. And when we were standing on that lawn, it was right on the lake, and I walked out on the pier, and I said a prayer. And my prayer was, thank you, God, that this is the next indicated thing. Because the next indicated thing isn't always a dirty diaper and an alarm clock and a baby, a bill. Sometimes the next indicated thing makes your heart blow up in your chest with joy. I had it many times, many times with Alcoholics Anonymous, helping a new guy and seeing him just relax a little. I went to the hospital with my wife in the car, to the right hospital, insured. Both times our next 2 children were born. And you guys should try that. It's awesome. I've had these amazing experiences, you know, and I get a little worried about, sometimes speakers come up here and they tell you, man, I got sober and everything got great and everything was wonderful. And you know, I've been sober 18 years. Both my parents died right in front of me. I watched them. I've had great jobs. I've had not so great jobs. I've had a sponsee commit suicide directly because of something I said to him. It's been what it's been. It's been what it's been. And when I was married for 5 years, I walked in the house and I found my wife on the floor and she had a massive stroke. And that was almost 10 years ago, and she's never going to be the same. You know, she had a tear in her carotid artery from a massager and stopped all the blood going to her brain. And she speaks to me. If she were here tonight, you would be charmed by her. But she's paralyzed and she has brain damage, and she needs help. She can't take care of the house. She can't, you know, she does a lot. She does a lot. But my partner, you know, the person that was my alpha partner that ran things, she's gone now. She's gone through. And you know what? When I'm at home, I get to undress my wife in the morning. I get to dress her in her clothes for the day. And at night, I get to undress her and put her in her pajamas. And I can't believe my luck. I can't believe how lucky I am. This person who transformed my life, who gave me confidence to soar, who's personally responsible for the success I've had in business, who raised my standards, who knows me better than anyone, now actually needs me. She doesn't want it, she doesn't like it, but she allows me to take care of her. So, what I get upset with in Alcoholics Anonymous, there's a lie they tell you here. I'm going to warn all you newcomers. Somebody's going to walk up to you and they're going to say, everything is going to be all right. Wow! That's not true. Things are going to be what things are going to be. Things are going to be great. Things are going to be tough. Your perception doesn't matter. Over here in reality, if you can leave that, if you can learn to get away from that, if you can do the spiritual exercises, if you can forgive, if you can get involved, you end up over here in reality. And here there's presence, there's richness. There's something that's always sweet. So it's not that everything's going to be okay. That's not what they're trying to tell you. What they're trying to tell you is, whatever happens, you're going to be okay. And that's the truth. I'm living proof. Sandy's living proof. Jerry's living proof. Teresa's living proof. All of you are living proof. So they say don't leave before the miracle happens, and that's another thing we say to confuse the newcomer. They kept saying that. I thought it kept happening. I'm like, sober 4 days. Don't leave before the miracle happens. I'm like, I thought this was it. You know, I did a fifth step, and Sister Dennis Ann didn't come out of a closet and stab me in the eyes with a knife. And I thought this was the miracle, you know. But I'll tell you what the miracle is, and then I'll shut up. The miracle is I came here and I was an animal. I pushed a girl down a flight of stairs and I didn't care at all. And now I get to take care of the most elegant, loving, pure spirit I've ever met in my life. And I can't believe my luck. I've become a human being. That's the miracle. Thanks for letting me share.